Okay, viewers, we are starting the bulletin with the big breaking news. The centre has permitted cab aggregators such as Ola and Uber and also Rapido to charge up to twice the base fare as a surge price during peak hours. Now, that's up from the previous cap 1.5 times during the non-peak hours. The fare must be at least 50% of the base rate. That's the latest news coming in, news which affects each and every one of us. Centre basically has permitted all these cab aggregators. What is this permission? They have been permitted to charge up to twice the base fare. What does this mean for you and me? My colleague Hina is going to break it down for us. Pragya is also joining us live on the broadcast. Hina, I'll come to you first. Help us understand, what does this mean? The centre basically permitting these cab aggregators to charge up to twice the base fare during, obviously, what they call, quote unquote, the surge price during peak hours. What does this mean, for commuters like you and me?
Before I answer that question, Meenakshi, I want to ask you, how often do you book a cab or you take a cab when you are commuting, in Delhi and NCR?
Well, just about every day, na? I mean, I'm sure you know more than anyone else. Right after, completing my shift, that's around 5 to 6 p.m. That is the peak hour we are speaking of.
Yes. So for those who actually, book their cabs during peak hours specifically, it's a very important news for them because they will now have to pay more money. Because during peak hours specifically, as per the new guidelines, the government has allowed surge pricing. So right now, the surge price that was allowed was about 1.5 times of the base fare. But now, as per the new rules, the government has allowed that during peak hours, cab aggregators like Ola, Uber, Rapido, etc. can actually charge up to twice the base fare. Currently, they can charge up to 1.5 times the base fare during peak hours specifically. So that is rule number 1 that has now kicked in, and this is definitely going to lead to the cost going up for commuters who specifically book cabs during the peak hours, and it should not be less than 50% during the non-rush hours. So during the non-peak hours as well, the prices are going to go up. Another very important rule that is going to kick in is about the cancellation policy. So in case a driver cancels the cab for whatever reason, then 10% of the fare not exceeding 100 rupees is going to be imposed on the driver, and similar sort of rule is going to apply to the rider as well. So if you or me cancel the cab, then the 10% of the fare, not more than 100 rupees, is something that we also will have to be ready to pay. So these are some of the new rules that are now going to be kicking in. It clearly means that surge pricing has been allowed, and those who book cabs, especially during the peak hours, will have to get ready to shell out more money every time they book the cab.
Well, get ready to shell out more money, viewers, especially if you are booking cab during peak hours like me. Pragya is also live with us. Pragya, help us understand really the backstory, the logic behind, this move, and exactly what does this move mean? One, obviously, for the aggregators and for commuters.
Basically, the government wanted that there should be no higher surge charges when it comes to the peak hours. So states also have been advised to adopt the revised guidelines, and they have to do it within the 3 months of the time. The idea basically behind this is that consumers should not be burdened during the period of surge in traffic, and this is why the burden has been shifted onto the non-peak hours. The government has been getting a lot of complaints about the surge, and also the charges that have been taken by the Uber, Ola, Rapido, etc. And they are also very not according to the guidelines and everything. They are not charging according to them. So the differences in the rates that they were charging from the people who were also accepting these services were very different. So these are the complaints, that some of the complaints that have been given to the government by many of the consumers. In fact, it is after that the government has advised that, in fact, they have also now come out with a guideline that consumers should not be burdened during the surge in traffic, and they should not be burdened by the prices of that. So, and there is also, as you have rightly said, there is also a cancellation policy that has come into place right now, which is that if you cancel a booking, if a driver does it, then it has to be borne by the driver and aggregator. 10% of the fare is a penalty with a cap of ₹100. And if it is done by the person who has booked the cab, then he has to bear the penalty as well. So these guidelines have been given by to the state governments as well, and this will be notified they have to notify, in fact, the base fare, because base fare are different in different states. So once there is a unified base fare, then these guidelines will be implemented by the states as well, and this is the reason why they have been given a 3 month period to implement these guidelines, Meenakshi.
Right, and Hina, if you could also come in here and help us understand. I mean, Pragya was telling us, the timeline which has been given. When can we expect these guidelines to come into effect?
As per the guidelines, the states have been advised to adopt these revised guidelines within the next 3 months from the date of their issue, and may include provisions in addition to the ones that are specified in the revised norms. To also simplify it for our viewers, Meenakshi, let's also tell us that, why it's not really going to pinch their pockets very badly is because now what the government has done is the government has set a lower limit and an upper limit. So the cab aggregators like Ola, Uber, Rapido, etc. cannot go above 2 times the base fare, cannot go below 50% of the base fare. So there's a lower limit and then there's an upper limit as well. Right now, what was happening was that arbitrarily surge pricing, was kicking in, especially during peak hours. Demand-supply mismatch was leading to the prices, going really up. So what the government now has done is that, okay, you want to charge surge pricing because there are specific hours during the day when there is a rise in demand of cabs, and that's the time when you have an opportunity as well as, a time that you can really earn. So that's the mindset of the aggregators here. Now, given, the cabs which are in short supply as well, so for the consumers, for passengers, it used to be a big problem, and they would arbitrarily charge higher amounts. So what the government, as per, through these new regulations has done is they've given them an upper limit. Okay, you want to go ahead with surge pricing, then you cannot go beyond 2 times of the base fare, but at the same time you cannot go below 50% of the base fare. So there is this limit that has been set, and we'll have to see how it really impacts the passengers, how much of a difference it's going to make once they now start booking the cabs as these new regulations kick in.
Well, I can already see it pinching our pockets. Pragya continues to be live with us. Pragya, again, as we were discussing, it's going to be obviously a relief for aggregators who had been, raising all the issues which they are facing to the government for quite some time, but a big pain point for the commuters, isn't it?
Well, you're absolutely right, and the guidelines also specify that there will be no, fare for the deadline mileage. The cars and the cabs charge for us for the distance that in fact the consumers did not even travel. They say that we go up and down, and we also need to charge for that. So there will be basically no rate and no fare for that deadline mileage, which will also ease on the pockets of the consumer, Meenakshi. And not just that, there are many safety guidelines also that government has issued. One is that you need to have your tracking and location devices up to date, and you need to keep it on every time. Not just that, if your rating falls below 5% given by the consumer, then you also need to go training programs. So those training programs also need to be done by the aggregators. So a lot of responsibility on the aggregators. Till now they have been evading all of that, and we have been seeing the kind of services, despite shelling out a lot of money, the kind of services the consumers were given. So a lot of complaints about that, and in fact in these new guidelines the government has taken care of that as well.
Well, absolutely. And let's talk about the guidelines, obviously, which have come in. And to simplify this for our viewers, the centre at the moment has permitted cab aggregators. What they're allowed is to charge up to twice the base fare as surge price during peak hours. That's going to be up from the previous cap of 1.5 times. Hina obviously is with us. Hina, during non-peak hours, what happens?
During the non-peak hours, there isn't any new guideline that has been, announced by the government. It is largely to tackle this issue of surge pricing that has been a cause of concern for passengers.
Okay,
as well.
Apologies, I'm interrupting you here. We have Mohan Das Pai on the phone line with us. Morning, sir. Thank you for joining us on Times Now. What do you have to say, sir, about the latest move, centre permitting, as we were telling our viewers, cab aggregators, they're going to be allowed to charge up to twice the base fare as surge price. That's going to happen during the peak hours.
No, I think it's a very good move because we need to have consumer protection. The problem in India is we don't have surplus capacity for public transport or for transportation. We are not able to meet the peak need, and this distorts the pricing mechanism. But I agree that everybody should be free to price whatever they want, we must remember that, running a cab is a privilege, a license given by the government. Everybody cannot run a cab. It is a privilege and a license. When the government grants a privilege and a license, government must look at consumer protection, and saying that it cannot be more than 100% more or 2 times the base fare, I think is a good move. In fact, even for the airlines, government should bring in such things, because there's a great degree of unhappiness when prices suddenly shoot up because there's scarcity. So I think it's a good move to expand the market, to bring in certainty and to protect consumers. I think it's a good move. While people may criticize and say we want freedom to price, we want this, we want that and all that, which is very good. I agree with them, but we need to have something to protect consumers too, because these are areas where there's a license and a privilege. It's not a free-for-all. It's not a free-for-all everywhere. Everybody cannot go run a cab. Everybody cannot do whatever they want, right? So I think it's a very good move.
Right, so you're saying it's a good move, but do you not also think it's going to hurt the pockets of the consumers, the commuters, because these aggregators are going to be allowed to charge up to twice the base fare, and especially during peak hours? While I understand that, one must shift to public transport, but the public transport system also is not all that robust in our country, and many of us are heavily dependent on cabs.
No, you're not understanding. Today they can charge what they want for peak, right? Today they can charge what they want for peak. They can charge 5 times. Now the 5 times is come down to just double. I think it's a good move. I don't know why people are objecting. Earlier, you could charge 5 times, 10 times, do what you want. Now you can't charge more than 2 times the base fare. So there's a limit to what you can charge. And at peak time, costs go up everywhere. For example, peak time, even the power costs go up. Peak time, there's a peak time power cost. I think it's important to cut down the peak, because nobody can make sure at the peak time everything is available for everybody. I think it's a very good move. Please understand the alternative. Alternative is free for all, where you can go up 5 times, 4 times. Now it is capped at double. I think it's very good news.
Right. Mr. Mohandas Pai, while that's a valid point that you're making, of course, like during COVID era, I remember for airlines as well, the government had set a lower limit and an upper limit. In the similar fashion now for cab aggregators as well, a lower limit and an upper limit for the surge pricing has been fixed by the government. But don't you think the focus should also be on perhaps ensuring that we have more vehicles on the road, so that there is, no concept of surge pricing?
No, I totally agree with you. We are a country of shortages. We are not able to meet peak demand. Let's be very clear. Will we be able to meet peak demand in the next 5 years? I doubt very much, because the number of consumers coming is going to be very high. So we have to find a middle path, and this is a good middle path. I hope now Ola and Uber will expand the market, get more vehicles to come. But you see, the problem is between the peak and the slack, if the gap is too high, you can't run a business. This is a problem for people to expand capacity between the peak and the peak must be brought down so that the traffic is even throughout the day, and then there'll be surplus capacity. This is a very big problem all around the world. All around the world, the peak problem is a very big problem, and the only way it can come is to flatten the peak, so that, you can possibly supply better, and throughout the day, the demand will be at reasonable levels.
Right.
If you have a demand of 30% at the slack period, peak goes to 150. How will you increase supply? You can't do it.
Right.
This is a problem. So I think it's a very good first move.
Okay.
It must be done. It must be done even in the airlines, because see, the peak could be 1%, 2%, 1 or 2%. The fare may go up 5x. But that creates so much of unhappiness and bad will for all the airlines.
Right.
They must also put in some norms themselves.
Right. Mr. Mohandas Pai, I request you to please stay on with us. And you correctly mentioned that this is perhaps the first move, and now you're saying it is the middle path, perhaps a win-win solution for both the cab aggregators as well as the consumers. But of course, the focus should now be on ensuring that these cab aggregators also add a little more supply, so that this entire surge pricing concept really goes away and eventually passengers are not inconvenienced. We have Meenakshi Bijon Mishra, who represents consumers in this country, the voice of consumers in this country, also joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Bijon Mishra, good morning. Thank you for speaking with us here on Times Now. Your first reaction to this surge price that government has now allowed for cab aggregators up to 2 times the base fare. Mr. Mohandas Pai says it's a welcome move. At least now there is a lower limit and an upper limit.
Yeah, good. I also always feel that there should be innovation brought in terms of pricing. But the most important aspect is we have to make it transparent. The consumers must come to know how you are, calculating the base price. What are the ingredients or the impediments you are taking into consideration so that when the input cost goes up, the pricing also goes up in that manner. And the regulator, the Motor Vehicles Act of our country lays down the law. It has a regulator. Every state has a transport department. What are the regulators doing in these kind of issues? So they have to build on this kind of a proposal which has been given by the central government to ensure that there is transparency. We want to make sure that in all pricing, the consumers are able to appreciate that nobody is profiteering. We want that people should make profit on their investment so that the industry grows. But there should not be profiteering out of innocent consumers who have no options at times but to become victims of such exploitation. And this is what we are all the time trying to tell the policymakers, lawmakers, to ensure that they bring in transparency, they make the regulators more proactive, they make the regulators competent in terms of the domain subject. We don't find them. We don't find experts working in the transport department to do these kind of calculations in terms of pricing.
Right.
And we open up the market.
Point taken. So at least, some sort of a base fare has been set, and Ola, Uber, Rapido, these cab aggregators cannot charge whatever they want. That's the, sort of remarks coming in from our experts. End of the questions is that should we to begin with have this concept of surge pricing or not? Even when, the prices is being fixed, they are going to be allowed to charge up to twice the base fare. It certainly is going to pinch the pocket of the consumers. Is this move in, favor of consumers, the commuters or not? That's a debate which we will have during the course of the day. As of now, Hina and Pragya, thank you for joining us with all these updates. We'll step into a short commercial break. News and updates on the other side. Please don't go anywhere.